Hi, this is Kyffin Simpson, and you're listening to the DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast.
Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast. A very special episode for this week because we are joined not only by Archie and Ellie, but the driver of the number 4 Chip Ganassi Racing Honda, Kyffin Simpson. Kyffin, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you.
Got to make a quick revelation. You're the first ever IndyCar driver younger than me, so you make me feel a bit old. So you're already somewhat of an enemy. It's so fun.
Well, that's not a good start.
Slightly older than me, I believe, but not by much. Yeah, just to kick things off, we're only 5 races now from the end of your rookie year. It seems to have just absolutely flown by, really. Just how have you found it, just generally speaking? How do you reflect on kind of what's been so far? And mainly, what has it been like being an IndyCar driver?
Yeah, it's been incredible. It's been an intense year, to be honest, with a lot of back-to-back races and not a whole lot of break in between to really digest everything. But in a way, I think that's also been quite nice to just have consistency and lots of time in the car. So it's been a tough year, but I think we've been doing a good job on my development and just kind of progressing each race.
And as you said, it's a busy period, but now we've got a little break due to the Olympics. So what sort of stuff are you getting up into your spare time across this break now? You've got a bit of time to relax. Are you at home? Are you at the shop much? What are you sort of doing in this time?
Right now I'm at the shop. I was in Florida for a couple days, and then I went back to Barbados to see some family and some friends, and had a good time down there. And then I'll be up here for a couple days before we've got a gateway test in 2 days, and yeah, then we'll be back in the car for that, and then I've got another week off, so I'll probably go see some family in Florida or something like that.
Awesome. And as we're quickly touching on the Olympics, if you were an IndyCar driver, do you ever imagine yourself in any other sports? You've probably been asked this, but do you see yourself anywhere else?
Not really. I was never great at any other sport like that. I liked playing a lot of other sports, but I was never good.
Anything you're going to be watching over the next few weeks?
Yeah, I definitely want to watch like the 100-meter sprint and 200-meter sprints. Because I've just always enjoyed watching those races. But I haven't actually gotten a chance to watch any of it yet, so might have to go do some recap.
Much Cayman representation to your knowledge, or?
As far as I know, there isn't anyone from Cayman, but there are 2 or 3 people from Barbados there. So that's going to be cheering them on.
Let's just rewind a bit so the viewers can get to know you better. Obviously, it is your rookie year and people might not know too much about you. Just maybe give us a bit of background to yourself. Where did you grow up? And obviously, you've had a bit of a debate of your nationality in racing. Who is Kyffin Simpson in some ways?
Yeah, I'm a race car driver born in Barbados, living in the Cayman Islands. And yeah, I've been racing since I was 9, started in go-karts when I was 9 years old, and just kind of progressed through the ranks over the years, and now I'm a full-time IndyCar driver.
And just for the viewers, what was it like back home in the Cayman Islands? I know in the UK, a lot of us see it as like a holiday destination, like people's paradise dream getaway. But what's it like sort of growing up there? What's unique about the whole place? If you're the Cayman Islands tourism officer, what are you sort of saying to everybody?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great place. It's such a beautiful island, and it's all about like being out on the water. That island's got it's a very flat island, so there's not a ton to do on the island, but the beaches and the water sports and everything is what everyone's up to. And so getting out on the water is just something everyone does, and most people have like at least a little dinghy to go out boating and just getting out on the water.
And then how does someone from the Cayman Islands suddenly find an interest in motorsport, and how do you sort of develop that interest in a place where there is no motorsport culture?
Yeah, so in Cayman, there is actually nothing. There is a little bit of drag racing, and that's about it. But in Barbados, there is a track there, and my dad was good friends with the people that owned the track, and they're huge motorsports people, and we were always very friendly with them. And so Zane Maloney, who races in Formula 2, I grew up with, and he was always my good friend, and he's the one that got me into racing, and just kind of fell in love with it from there, and continued with it into America.
Did a good job at it.
Yeah. Going back to the start of your racing, how old was you when you started to do go-karting, and like how did you well, you've already said how did you get into it, but what were like your earliest memories from it, and did you have to move away to do it, or could you stay home?
So I was 9 when I first drove a go-kart, and then my first race season, I don't think I started racing until I was 10. But I watched Formula 1 quite a lot. My dad was big into Formula 1. Rally is a huge thing in Barbados, and there's always a big rally there every year. So we would always go watch the rally, and just always around cars growing up. So I always loved cars and loved racing, and just kind of grew into it. And so when I was 12, we moved to Cayman, and that same season I started racing in America. So I'd kind of fly up to America for the race, and then fly back wherever that race would be, whether it was Florida or, I don't know, Indiana or wherever. And
then at what stage does a racing career kind of become a feasible prospect in your mind? Like, when did IndyCar and the Road to Indy ladder kind of come onto your radar? Like, do you have any early memories of watching IndyCar?
So I started off watching Formula 1 pretty much exclusively. I didn't really watch other forms of motorsport. It was kind of just Formula 1, and being a Formula 1 driver is what I started off wanting to do. But eventually, racing in America more, I started watching IndyCar, and met a lot of people that had previously worked in IndyCar or had some tie to IndyCar. So just started watching it more, started getting into it more, and realized, wow, this is a really incredible form of motorsports. And I just loved how close it was and how close the racing was. So that's what really drew me to IndyCar rather than Formula 1. And so I just, from there, I kind of decided I wanted to take the more American route towards IndyCar.
And then what age were you when you started racing in cars?
I started racing cars when I was 15.
So would you say kind of through that, because that's only in sort of the last few years, really, would you say you've been quite a fast learner to kind of come through the ranks in the American Open Wheel Series, and then kind of have the success that you had, obviously, in Formula Regional Americas and going into Indy Lights then at what is a very young age compared to some drivers you do see in these championships?
Yeah, I think I started F4 when I was 15, and I didn't do a full season of that. I moved to Formula Regional quite quickly because just different reasons. But when I was driving Formula Regional and then won that championship, we were just going to move on to to Indy Lights that next year, which then became Indy Next. So I just wanted to follow that path. But during that whole time, I was also doing sports car stuff with doing a full IMSA Endurance Championship in GTD in 2022. And then I raced in the Endurance Championship last year in LMP2 and a couple other sports car things as well.
And then what's that like at that sort of age, because we're kind of all in our late teenage years. And what is it like for you? What sort of sacrifices do you have to make being a race car driver at that sort of age? Yeah,
it's tough. Especially even in karting. When you're in karting, you're racing 26 weekends out of the year. So it's a lot to do, both school and racing. So all of that makes it very tough to spend time with family and friends. So when I moved to Cayman, obviously new place, new environment and all that. So it was a big change, and just kind of things like that it makes it difficult when you're not around all the time to like make friends and all that. So just little things like that are small sacrifices that you have to make to become an IndyCar driver and to really take it to the next level.
And as you sort of progressed up the ladder, it was obviously Indy Next was sort of the next step for you, which made sense. And if we look back at last year, for example, you obviously missed a few rounds, but you had a pole position, you took a few podiums. So how would you sort of review that year as a learning year before stepping up to IndyCar? And do you feel like you made the progress last year?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think I performed very well last year in Indy Next. I just felt like in the year as a whole, I didn't perform how I should have, and I didn't feel like I performed how I realistically could have if I, had done this better, done that better, put a lap together in qualifying, whatever it is. But like I raced European Le Mans Series last year as well, and I was really learning a lot in that as well. And I was able to perform well in that, which was good. But in Indy Next, I wasn't happy with how I performed. I think getting that pole at Road America was nice, and the couple podiums I had, but I definitely felt like I should have been in a place last year to win some races.
And kind of by this point, I mean, you've been on Ganassi's books for quite a few years now, but how did that affiliation with Chip Ganassi Racing kind of as a development driver, and how did that come about, and how did that feel for you at the time, becoming, a part of the program of such a major IndyCar outfit?
Yeah, so I got to meet Chip at Daytona would have been 2022, when I was doing my first 24 hours of Daytona, and we got to talk about my future in racing, and just kind of the relationship grew from there. And by it might have been May. By around May, we had signed the contract to join Ganassi as a development driver, and that was a great thing for me because I was really able to learn a lot from everyone here at Ganassi and really tap into their resources like Dario and all of their engineers as well, and got to learn a lot from all of them over the last couple of years.
And what did that role kind of involve for you during those few years?
So for the most part, I just kind of just hung around and just tried to listen in on as many engineering meetings and races and qualifying sessions as I could. Obviously kind of tough when I have my Indy Next schedule on top of that. So usually like on a weekend, if I was racing at the race we were at, I would do my race and I would finish up my briefing with my team, and then I would go over to the one of the Ganassi pit stands to just listen in and learn from them over the race, and kind of learn how they approach a race and how their strategy plays out and all of that. And I think that was very helpful, especially coming into this year, to know a little bit more what to expect from how the team works perspective, but also as how races play out.
Yeah, so when did IndyCar kind of come on the table for you for 2025? Like, did you know it was going to be happening? Kind of, was it the plan, or was it kind of out of the blue and like taking you by surprise?
It was kind of out of the blue, to be honest. I think we were hoping to be moving up to IndyCar, but you never really know. And then Mike Hull just kind of called me one day and said, yeah, you're going to be in the car next year. So yeah, that was pretty incredible to hear, and a big moment for me for sure.
And you did quite a lot of preparation, I believe, for this season, kind of testing a lot of different cars. Did you test an F2 car? Am I right in saying that? Yeah. So how did that help? Okay. How did that kind of help your preparation, and what sort of tracks were you kind of doing that at?
Yeah, so we went and tested a GP2 car at a track called Monte Blanco, and I just we wanted to go test that to try to get some more experience in higher downforce, higher horsepower cars like the IndyCar. And we also wanted to try to get some experience on some tires that fall off a little bit quicker. With the Indy NXT tires, they don't really fall off much. Like kind of throughout a race, you'll just kind of plateau the whole race because tire falls off a little bit, but you also burn off fuel, so it kind of evens out. And you don't really have that big fall off that you see in IndyCar throughout a stint. So that was something that we wanted to get some experience on, and yeah, so that was really helpful for that. And I think it was a good start to getting to kind of learn these different aspects of IndyCar.
That's really interesting.
You've obviously driven, as I said, the GP2 car in Spain, but alongside your entire career, you've done quite a lot in sort of the sports car side of things. So sort of why did you decide to do sports cars alongside your single-seater career, and how valuable has that experience been? I mean, not only driving in it, but you found a lot of success, as you said, winning European Le Mans and doing strongly in the Asian Le Mans series. So what's that sort of been like for you into gaining more experience?
Yeah, I think the main reason we wanted to venture into sports car racing was to get some experience with pit stops and fuel saving and tire management. And I think doing that was a big help, especially because Indy NXT doesn't do pit stops. So that's one thing that you miss out on, and something that is pretty important for IndyCar. So that was the main reason we wanted to start doing some sports car stuff. And I think alongside that, we ended up getting a whole lot more out of it with being able to win the European Le Mans Series Championship and just get a lot of good race experience under my belt as well.
And I think I remember you mentioning ahead of the IndyCar season back on Content Day, which was that was back in January, I think, that kind of this year was just quite important just to learn things for in your maiden IndyCar season. So can you just kind of talk us through what expectations you did set, and then sort of whether you kind of feel like you're now achieving what you set out to do kind of in these later stages of your rookie year?
Yeah, I think my main goals going into this year were to just maximize the car at every opportunity I had. And I think in the race situations, we've been doing that quite well. I feel like I've been doing a good job in race situations, being on pace and being able to do whatever the team needs me to do, whether it's save fuel, save tires, or push hard and close a gap or whatever. And I feel like we've done that well, whether it's on ovals, street courses, or road courses. But I feel like I've been lacking in qualifying quite a lot, and that's something that I'm looking into a lot to improve going into this last little bit of the season.
So would you say that has been kind of your biggest challenge so far? And do you reckon that going on to next year that you'd still need to kind of improve on that and kind of overcome with qualifying?
Yeah, for sure. I think as of right now, qualifying is definitely my weakest point, and it's something that I feel like I've been getting better at over these last couple of races, but I need to really put it all together, especially coming into only one road course left. Definitely wanting to put it all together for that last race in Portland.
God, that's crazy to think we've only got one road course race left. But in terms of that sort of learning, I mean, a lot has been made of this. I assume you've been asked this a lot, but what have you learned from having Scott Dixon, possibly one of the greatest drivers ever, and Alex Palou, who obviously has won multiple championships in recent years? What have you learned from them as teammates, and how much have they helped kind of guide you through this year?
Yeah, I mean, they've been a huge help. It's hard to really say exactly how much they've helped me, because it's just been like, we get all the data from them as well, so we're able to compare. But even just being able to talk to them, and like in the engineering room, my seat is like 2 chairs away from Scott, and then like Alex is just across from him, so like I can talk to them both very easily. So it's very collaborative, and it's easy to learn off of each other. And also having Dario in there and all the other engineers and having Marcus and Linus in there as well to kind of learn from them as well. And it's just been great to learn from everyone in that room.
Yeah, so you mentioned Dario. I mean, on your stand, you've got Chris Wheeler, who is an experienced head, and even if it's kind of the first time in this sort of, is it strategist role? I think Sebastian Bourdais have been with you at times this year as well. So how much of an influence kind of do these experienced heads that aren't necessarily your current teammates, how much of an influence do they have as well?
Yeah, it's a huge influence. I think Seb's been a huge help this year, being around for a lot of the races. He wasn't really supposed to be around this year, but then he was at the St. Pete race, and we saw him on I think it was on the Thursday, and he was just kind of hanging around, and we were like, oh, well, you want to hang out this weekend? Because he was saying how he didn't really have anything else to do. And so, yeah, he was around for that weekend, and he was a huge help. So started coming out to more races, and yeah, he's just been a huge help this whole year, trying to put me on the right path and give me advice at different tracks, and kind of helping with the nuances of some of these new tracks that I've been at.
Yeah. Is there kind of one thing or a few things in particular that you would you've learned from them that you'll take away, kind of just this year in particular?
I'm not sure that there's really just one thing. There's so much that I've learned throughout this year that's all been very helpful, and it's tough to pick just one thing because everything's just been, it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it all comes together. And yeah, it's been a really solid year, being able to learn a lot.
Obviously, coming into this year, the team expanded to 5 cars because of you stepping up. So I guess, first of all, how great is that as a rookie to have so many cars to gather data from, to gather information from? And then, you know, especially when you compare it to next year, where the team likely will have to downsize because of the impending charter agreement, is that something you really value in your first year to gain more experience?
Yeah, I think having more cars is very helpful. Last year in Indy NXT, we had 8 or 9 cars at pretty much every race, which was insane, and a lot of data to go through. But I think the more data you have, it's really just helpful. There's not really a point where the engineers are like, too much data. So having the extra data is just helpful for the whole team to figure out where the car is and figure out what the car needs. And we all sometimes go our individual ways, but it's still helpful to have these different ways of thinking and ideas on how to set up the car.
And then kind of getting into key moments from this year, you obviously made your Indy 500 debut. That's kind of the race that everyone thinks about. I mean, you made it nicely into the field, raced well. But how was that experience? Can you just kind of take us through, as a rookie, how that whole event feels, both on and off the track?
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, I got to experience it the last 2 years just on the sidelines, watching everyone else race, and being at that track on the grid before the race is just an incredible feeling. Like, you stand out there and there's 350,000, 400,000 people all around the grandstands, and it almost feels claustrophobic with how many people there are on the grid. And but it's just the coolest feeling to walk out through Gasoline Alley and see all those people on the grandstands, and then going into turn 1 on the first lap, and you see all the people in the grandstands, and yeah, it's just incredible.
And you talk of going into turn 1. What is the feeling like in the car when you're going at those speeds at up towards 240 miles per hour? What is that feeling? Because kind of the regular human mind can't really comprehend that.
Yeah, it's insane. When you turn up the boost for qualifying is really where you feel it, because you're just one car on track and you've trimmed the car out as much as you can, and you're just like, all through practice you're going like 220 by yourself, and then you show up for qualifying and you've trimmed the car out and you've turned up the boost, and as soon as you turn to that quali mixer, it just takes off, and it's the craziest feeling. But it's just such a cool experience.
It's a bit of a random question, this, but you mentioned all the fans. And do you sort of like experience and sort of hear the fans when you're racing? Let's say this year where you had 2 overtakes on the last lap. Were you sort of in the car and hearing everyone explode over what was going on in front of you?
I don't think I really heard anyone. The wind's pretty loud at 200 mile an hour, but yeah, it is pretty crazy because you kind of have like a sense that something's happened on those last laps when everyone's kind of freaking out in the grandstands, and yeah, it's just a cool experience. But yeah, it's just such a grand race that it's hard to comprehend without actually driving in it. So getting to experience that this year was pretty incredible.
And obviously, this wasn't the only Triple Crown race you experienced this year for the first time, because obviously you made your Le Mans debut this year. So just first of all, how did the call come around? How did the opportunity come for you to go to Le Mans?
Yeah, it was pretty random actually. They messaged me on Instagram asking if I wanted to, if I would be interested in racing with them in Le Mans, and I said, well, yeah, I'd be interested, but I do have this conflict that was at the time the Milwaukee test that I think was on the Wednesday, which was the same day as the drivers' meeting. So I wouldn't have been able to do both. But we worked it out, and we were able to get the exemption from the test, and I was able to go over there and race at Le Mans for the first time, which was actually very funny because at the beginning of the year I said one of my goals was to race Le Mans. And that ended up happening this year, which was pretty incredible. So I'm very happy to get to do that for the first time. And I was a little bit sad that we couldn't perform a bit better, but we were very quick and had a great time anyway. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I think that's fascinating that negotiations are happening through Instagram DMs, to be honest. But I know the race was frustrating for you. Your teammates obviously had a few sort of issues, but sort of how do you regard the experience? How do you feel calling yourself not only an Indy 500 driver, but a Le Mans driver? And is it something you want to do again in the future?
Yeah, for sure. I think racing Le Mans racing sports cars in general is just something I enjoy doing, whether it's in IMSA or in over in Europe in WEC or ELMS. It's just, I enjoy the different style of racing. It's quite refreshing to it's almost like having a bit of a break from IndyCar racing. Like, even though it's still racing, it's kind of like having a break. So yeah, it's just a fun, different form of racing to get to experience. So any chance I get to do any form of endurance racing or sports car racing, I like to try to take advantage of.
And just because the fans would be screaming, if you had to pick one of the Indy 500 and Le Mans, would you dare pick one?
I don't know. Both of them are very incredible, and both of them are probably equally as spectacular. I'd know. Man, I don't think I can pick one. They're both pretty.
Looking at next year, obviously, if you when you're racing in IndyCar, it won't be possible for you to compete at Le Mans just because of the clash with Gateway. So I know your teammate Alex sort of expressed his disappointment. Are you disappointed by that, or do you sort of see this year as an add-on to your IndyCar prospects, and then maybe you do it later on in your career?
Yeah, it's a little bit sad that they're clashing next year. I've heard a couple different reasons for it. Not really sure which one's the real one, but it's just kind of unfortunate that we can't be able to go over there and race, because I feel like it's not just fun for the drivers, but I feel like it's a good promotion for the series as well, being able to go over there and kind of advertise IndyCar in Europe as well. So a little bit sad from that point of view, but it is what it is, and we'll try to just make the most of next year.
Yeah, so kind of mid-season, IndyCar made the switch to the hybrid engine. Kind of, how has that been so far for you? Because you haven't had kind of like a lot of testing compared to your teammates. So, do you feel like you're comfortable with it, or do you like it more kind of with the hybrid, or did you like it kind of more before?
I'm not really sure exactly what I think of the hybrid yet. I think it makes it very technical, and it adds a new component to everything, which is kind of cool. And in some ways, I think that's a good thing for rookies because you don't have like the same thing that everyone's been working on for the last 20 years or whatever. So I think having a little bit of a change up is good for the rookies and kind of helpful because it just makes it a little bit different. It's not the same thing as every year. So it's been cool so far figuring out how it works and figuring out how best to use it. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out as we get into these last couple races.
And kind of looking at 2024 as a whole, IndyCar wise, do you have any particular highlights from the year so far? Any particular performances from yourself that people may not have seen that you're particularly proud of? Any race in particular that was most memorable? Maybe not the Indy 500.
Sorry. I don't know that there's. I mean, obviously the Indy 500 is a big one, and me getting to lead a couple laps there is a big highlight. But I think even the first race in St. Pete was a big highlight for me, getting my first IndyCar race under my belt, and I was very happy with how I performed there. We were able to move up from, I think we started like 23rd and we finished 12th. So it was a very good weekend for us, and so I think that was a big highlight for me, and getting to experience my first IndyCar race.
I'm sure the listeners will want to know. We saw quite a lot of mid or high on the TV in front of the two leaders. I'm sure, as some listeners will know, was there ever an instruction to try and hold up Pato O'Ward to give your teammate the win, or was it you were just minding your own business and they just happened to be there?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't anything me trying to hold up Pato. It was just I was in my own race. I was trying to stay on the lead lap, and the whole race I had good enough pace that they weren't really catching me. Like, I think after the first stop, Alex was 10 seconds back, and then after the second stop, we had a slightly slow stop, so they were 5 seconds back, I want to say, maybe 4. And then, yeah, they just kind of stayed there until I caught Canapino, and then when I caught Canapino and started getting the dirty air, then they caught me, and it just couldn't move. No one could really pass. So, yeah, it just kind of stayed in train there.
On that, there's a bit of a sort of a theory where the hybrids made it more difficult to overtake. I know Iowa was a bit different, for example, but do you think that's the case, or was it just track characteristics on that occasion?
I think it was mostly track characteristics. I think Mid-Ohio's a pretty tough track to pass anyways. It's very tough to pass at Iowa this year with the new service. I think that was the main reason we didn't see so much passing at Iowa, because the Highline just never had grip. It was never nearly as quick as being on the low line where everyone had been running and all the rubber was down. So I'd say the hybrid is actually it can actually be quite helpful, especially on restarts and starts, and how you use it on those restarts and starts and making passes. But I definitely wouldn't say it hurts passing.
We just have a few races left in 2024, obviously, as we sort of touched on a bit earlier. So is there anything you're looking forward to in particular? And is the goals remain the same, just maximize every result between now and the rest of the year?
Yeah, goals remain the same. I think, I don't know, we've got a lot of ovals coming up, so just going to really need to focus on my oval racing. Oval racing hasn't been one of my strongest suits in the last couple of years, so trying to improve that, and I feel like I've done a decent job at improving that over the last couple races, and yeah, just trying to keep making progress in that, and yeah.
Have you got preference for track type yet?
Yeah, I've always been a road course guy. I think street courses are cool as well, but more of a road course guy.
Yeah, what have you loved the most so far about being an IndyCar driver? And then kind of like on the flip side of that, what like don't you like the most?
Favorite part, just driving these incredible cars has to be my favorite part. I mean, just such a fun car to drive and such a fun car to race. So driving is, wow, crazy. The IndyCar driver likes driving. But yeah, that's got to be the favorite part for me. Least favorite part.
He wants to say the media commitments, doesn't he, at this point?
I don't really have one, to be honest. I mean, it's all part of the job, so it's you can't have one without the other, really. So it's all, to me, it's all one thing, and just an experience that I'm enjoying.
Yeah, making kind of the step up from Indy NXT to IndyCar, what has been your biggest adaptation so far?
Biggest adaptation is probably learning the tire. I'd say the tires, even though it's Firestone rubber to Firestone rubber, the way that they wear is very different. Obviously, the Indy NXT tire is built to be able to run much more laps than the IndyCar tire because they don't do pit stops. So trying to figure out the peak of the tire in qualifying and how the tire fall off is and how to warm the tires properly and all of that is a little bit more important when you're on those kind of tires that fall off a bit quicker. So just figuring out the tire and how they work.
And something I ask all of our kind of driver guests that we have is, what do you believe makes IndyCar so great for both you as a driver and for fans as well? Because kind of we all know, being involved, kind of how good it is, but there's this feeling that maybe it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. So how would you sort of describe the appeal of IndyCar to sports fans, or maybe most sport fans that don't watch IndyCar?
Yeah, I'd say IndyCar is just very pure racing. And I think because everyone's got the same car and there's only two different engine manufacturers, it makes it very even across the board. Everyone's got very similar stuff, and no one really has like a huge advantage over someone else unless like a team figures out how to make a car slightly better here, you know? So I think just it's very pure racing. It's very close racing. Everywhere we go, we're very, very close. From first to last is always very, very close. Like you'll go to some tracks and the difference between the top 12 will be like 0.2. And it's just insanely close, and it's tough to like, even if you're just a little bit off one weekend, it could be the difference between first and 15th.
If you could change one thing about IndyCar, what would it be and why?
I don't really know. I think being my first year, I haven't really experienced any, I'm just trying to take it all in of what IndyCar racing really is. So I haven't found any real issues with it. I think it's a very solid series, and it's a solid package. And I think the more experienced guys that have been racing it for several years will be able to be like, oh yeah, this might need a bit of improving, that and that. But it being my first year, I'm just trying to figure it all out and kind of learn how everything works.
If you could add any venue to the IndyCar calendar, what would you pick, however realistic or unrealistic it may be?
Ooh, man, that's a tough one. And an easy one would be Coda. I love that track. I think that track, IndyCar's gone there before. IndyCar doesn't have a race in Texas as of right now. I think that would be very cool. That's probably a potentially realistic one, I would hope. Other than that, I don't know, maybe doing like a race overseas, like since we don't race overseas anywhere, like in Europe, whether it's at a track like Silverstone or, I don't know, some sort of race in England or
that's what we
somewhere
like.
In Europe.
IndyCar in England. I previously mentioned you were friends with Zane Maloney, I think you said on Content Day as well. Do you still talk to him still? I think there's been a few rumours floating around he's looking at coming over to IndyCar. So have you spoken to him about racing in the series at all? Do you still talk to him a bit?
Yeah, I still talk to him quite a bit. I'm really good friends with his younger brother, and I was just hanging out with him a couple days ago in Barbados. And yeah, we're still good friends. We still talk a lot. He came over to Road America earlier this year to hang out and experience IndyCar for the first time, and it was great to have him around. And he was just kind of hanging out on the timing stand with Chris, and yeah, it was great to have him over.
Got a feeling we'll see him in the grid in a few years' time, or not sure?
I don't really know, but it would be great to have him over here. Obviously, it'd be we're good friends, but we're also very competitive against each other, so that'd be good sport.
Quick fire questions, like we said. Which IndyCar driver has the worst fashion sense?
Probably me, because I don't really have one. This is my normal outfit, just kind of like a plain black T-shirt and a plain black hat. So
He's honest.
yeah.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
I'm not a huge pizza guy, but I'm less of a pineapple guy, so I'll say no.
Good
Fair
choice.
enough.
Good choice.
If you were stuck on a desert island with another IndyCar driver, who would it be?
I don't really know. That would depend on if you want it to be a good time or if you want to survive.
What do you want it to be?
If you want to have a good time, I don't know. Armstrong would probably find a way to make it fun. Always good hanging around with him.
Do you have any hidden talents?
Hidden talents?
Is it all in racing?
No, I'm pretty good at kite surfing. Do quite a lot of that in Cayman with lots of water sports and stuff like that. So pretty good at kite surfing and a couple other water sports.
And what's a fun fact people might not know about Kyffin Simpson?
Fun fact. What's a fun fact? I'm first IndyCar driver from the Caribbean.
Nice.
Cool. And then just to close, we're running a playlist for all the IndyCar drivers that have come on the podcast. Have you got a couple of songs you would like to add to that playlist?
I don't listen to all that much music, so I don't know like lots of songs or anything. But if you don't have it on there already, should definitely add Life is a Highway.
All right, so that's all we've got for you, Kyffin. So really appreciate your time coming on the podcast. We wish you the best of luck for the 5 remaining races this season. Obviously, hope to bring that on into 2025. So thanks for joining us. You're welcome back anytime, and best of luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Huge thanks to Kyffin for joining us on the podcast. Great to have another driver on. We hope you enjoyed the 45 minutes or so with Kyffin Simpson and maybe learn a thing about him or two that you never knew before. Kyffin obviously drives for Chip Ganassi Racing, and if you want to support Kyffin and the rest of the Chip Ganassi Racing crew, you can head over to Formula Model Shop to buy much of their Chip Ganassi merch, whether that's caps, whether that's driver jerseys, whether that's die-cast models, whatever it is, Formula Model Shop will have it.
You can use the discount code 5BOMB, all one word, FIVEBOMB, to gain 5% off products on the FMS site. Visit the Instagram highlights on the DIVEBOMB Motorsport Instagram account for links to an exclusive VIP section on the FMS store, courtesy of DIVEBOMB.
As we know, Formula Model Shop is the best place to get your IndyCar merchandise in the UK and, of course, across the rest of the continent. And once you've read all our fantastic articles on the DIVEBOMB website, and if you really want to read the transcript with Kyffin, you can read that over this coming weekend. But there is a pink banner on the homepage of the DIVEBOMB website which will take you straight over to the Formula Model Shop website, or alternatively, you can find them at formulamodelshop.co.uk.
Stay tuned for exclusive giveaways, events, and other content.
So we all hope you enjoyed that episode of Kyffin Simpson. Next week we might have another driver, we might not. It's the Olympic break, all the drivers trying to enjoy themselves, so we're not trying to intrude their lives too much. But we hope you enjoyed it. Great to have another driver on the podcast, and so we appreciate Kyffin and the rest of Chip Ganassi Racing for giving up their time to speak to us. So thank you very much for watching, thank you very much for listening, and we hope to see you next time.